This video is for more advanced lifters, and it's all about whether you should train to failure or not. So, if you're a beginner, I urge you to stick around for the future you, or just click off if it's not something that's within your relevancy, because again, this is for lifters who have lifted for 6 months or more. For that, you're not really eligible to train to failure, unfortunately. So I might lose a lot of iteration there, which is sad. But getting straight into it, failure is the inability to continue simply in a lift. But what really is failure? I define failure as 2 different types, and in fact, this is what the fitness world defines it as in general. There is technical failure, which technical failure is the easier type of failure. In order to achieve technical failure, one must perform the lift to a certain amount of time where they can't do a single rep with correct form. Now, this is very different from mechanical failure. Technical failure is reasonably easy to achieve on some exercises. On some exercises, less so. But in general, for exercises like bench press, obviously it's pretty easy to achieve. Whereas for squats, it's incredibly hard to achieve. However, there is another type of failure that is way harder, and that is mechanical failure. Mechanical failure is completely different to technical failure because it goes 2-3 steps beyond technical failure. And mechanical failure is defined by not being able to move the weight any longer. This has a very specific element of achieving this. So, once you've reached technical failure and you can't do a single rep, do half reps until you can't do a single half rep, and then do quarter reps until you can't even move the weight. That is mechanical failure. And if we went to that on every set, 4 sets per workout would be more than enough to reach our peak results, because it's simply so exhausting. And it's easy to say like you could do it, but when you truly do imagine how hard it would be to do that on a set of squats or any leg exercise, you realize maybe I'll leave the gym after two exercises of this. Like, it's not a circus, man. This is real stuff. It's hard to do this, and that's why Mike Mentzer got so popular from doing it, because no one else would train like he did, and this would indeed cause him great success and make him the favorite to win an Olympia, which we all know got rigged by Arnold. Unfortunately, we didn't see his full potential because of an unfair competition rigging by Arnold. But that's besides the point. The next chapter of the video is the disadvantages and advantages of training to failure. So, what are the disadvantages of training to failure? Well, one of the disadvantages is you do admittedly have a higher risk of injury, but that's nuanced. Let me explain. So, if you're training to failure on every set and you're doing the same amount of sets as you would have done regardless, you are way more likely to fail. Well, obviously, because failure, but you're more likely to injure yourself because you're not letting yourself recover properly and letting your body adjust to the stimulus, also known as overtraining. However, there is a way to use failure responsibly, which I'll get into in the How to Train to Failure chapter of this episode, the final part of the video. But all you need to know is that if you train to failure correctly, then you need way less volume than if you don't train to failure. And then the other aspect of overtraining comes in. If you do a lot of volume, but you don't train to failure, you could still be overtraining, because volume and intensity are 2 pretty separate stimuli, even though they can collide to form a greater stimuli. So if you have extreme volume but low intensity, you could still be overtraining just from exhausting yourself, but not even achieving hard stimuli for the muscle, if that makes sense. And that is a worst case scenario that you don't want to happen to you, I would assume. So, what is another disadvantage of training to failure? Training to failure is harder to achieve. And as I said in the beginning, it's pretty inaccessible to beginners, which I think is unfortunate. However, actually, it makes their life a lot easier. Because beginners, you don't need to train as hard as intermediate or even advanced lifters in order to make progress. You can simply walk in a gym and make progress by playing around and just joking around with your friends. Which, I miss those days, admittedly. But it is what it is. Now that we're in the intermediate advanced lifting camp, we need to train way harder and achieve not even half the results that the easy lift, that the beginner lifters have achieved by doing pretty much nothing. Which is sad, but let's move to the advantages of training to failure. One advantage of training to failure is less useless fatigue, which is hard to explain, but I have a great analogy to point it out. So, imagine two runners. Both of them have one simple goal in mind: build their endurance. Build their stamina. And in order to build stamina, we need to learn how to get our heart rate up and know how to cope with that high heart rate. One of the runners takes a long distance approach where he runs a 5-kilometer run every day, and where the other runner runs 2 100-meter sprints every day. They achieve a similar stimulus to the heart. However, what is the difference between them? Well, the long distance runner has exhausted himself more and burned himself out more, also known as overtraining. And we can compare that to the sprinter being the guy who trains to failure, and the long distance runner being the high volume guy who never reaches failure because he has a lower stimulus but he does way more of it. So in the end, they might achieve the same result. However, the guy who trained to failure is less tired and less fatigued, less overtrained, and in that regard, less likely to get injured. And the same analogy is great because we can also refer to time saved. The 5K run is going to take the guy 25-30 minutes, whereas the 2 100-meter sprints is going to take the guy 5 minutes and achieve the same result. Same thing with the gym. Arnold used to train 2 hours a day, 2 hours a session, 2 sessions a day, 6 days a week, so 24 hours a week. 1/7 of his living, breathing time was spent training. And then there's Mike Mentzer, who trained 4 days a week for 45 minutes, a total of 3 hours every week, 8 times less than Arnold, achieving very close and comparable results, which can be down to genetics. And so we don't know really if he trained less hard than Arnold in a comparison directly. However, they did achieve similar results, so it is a valid comparison to draw that their methods are similarly productive. Now, another aspect is better results for some people. For some people, training to failure won't give them as much results because they're either cheating themselves and not truly reaching failure, or they get injured. But apart from that, training to failure is close to guaranteed to bring you better results than not training to failure, because you're providing your muscle a more novel stimulus, and you're giving yourself and your muscle a more dire need to adapt, which is really what muscle building is based off. Our muscles are built because they need to adapt to our current training. So once they adapt to that current training, then we need to increase, which is why progressive overload is a thing. And I talked about that in my previous video. You should go check it out after you finish watching this one. And now we're going to move on to the last chapter of the video. Should you train to failure? My short answer is yes. But I have to explain, how do you train to failure? So, firstly, only 1 to 2 sets per exercise. This is important because if you do any more than 1 to 2 sets per exercise, you're going to immediately feel a difference. And first of all, you might not even reach that if you are truly doing hard technical failure or worst of all, mechanical failure. If you're doing mechanical failure, no more than one set is advised per exercise. And how about how many sets per workout? If you're going to technical failure, the upper bound is like 12 sets. So like 6 exercises of 2 sets. Whereas if you're going to mechanical failure, a good amount would probably be 4 sets. 4 exercises of 1 set. I know that for high volume lifters who haven't heard of this ideology before, this seems incredibly unbelievable. Like, I do 30 sets per workout, but I can do 4 and achieve the same result. Indeed you can. And stick around, give this channel a subscribe, and I'll teach you all about how you can do this and more in the gym. Because you might have just spent hours of your life that you'll never get back by training uselessly. Now obviously it's fun, however, wouldn't you like to be more productive in the gym, and more productive outside the gym? And that's why training to failure has so many other benefits. And my final tip would be to take longer rest times. Obviously you're doing less volume, so you need a longer rest time to recover as well, because it's a harder stimulus between each set, to each set. So of course it's important to have your rest times longer than 2 minutes when you train to failure, whereas normally 30 seconds to would be okay. And yeah, that's it for this video. If you liked what you saw, check out my paid fitness community on Patreon, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and that's it for this video. Embrace progress, not perfection. See ya.